Welcome, everyone, to the Temple of Consciousness. My name is Ava. Thank you for tuning in. I've got a lot to tell you. For those of you who know me, who've been subscribed to me, to this channel, Ava's Temple of Consciousness, I've been on YouTube for 8 years, and on this particular channel here for about 6. And only recently did I decide to stop the ongoing theme that I had been exploring and creatively utilizing, which is the tarot. As it turns out, during this last summer, I had a lot of soul searching, deep introspection going on about this channel and how I should proceed with it, because my subscriptions had sort of come to a standstill, hovering around 15,000, and that's been for 6 years. And I noticed that what I was doing, which is delivering a tarot reading for every star sign, all 12, every month, for the 8 years that I've been on YouTube, I thought that I had brought that effort to its conclusion. It felt that way. It felt that way for many months, but it took me a long time to actually be brave enough to come to the decision to stop doing that. And then I thought, well, perhaps I would go in the direction of alternative healing, because that's always been a deep interest of mine, as I've been a yoga teacher for many, many decades, let's just say. And alternative healing has been a sort of priority of my research and understanding of health and well-being, including yoga, of course. So I thought to take it in that direction. In fact, I even announced that that was my intention. But I'm not credentialed in any field of alternative healing. I am a yoga teacher, and there, of course, I'm very well credentialed, but I was going to bring on a partner who was deeply credentialed in various alternative healing fields. And I thought that two of us could combine our knowledge and our ability to speak to issues of health, both on a physical and on a metaphysical level. But unfortunately, due to family circumstances, she was unable to partner with me. And so I had to literally rethink that possible direction. And was I willing to do that singularly by myself and risk the many legal repercussions that may be there as well? And I feel that instead, since I'm going to go this alone, that I would stay within the field of my own expertise, relative expertise, which is going back to the foundation of what this channel was named for, the temple of consciousness. That subject, the subject of consciousness, the nature of our inner reality, is and will always be a passionate interest of mine. I've garnered deep inspiration from various philosophies, ancient wisdom and understandings, and even channeled information from the hypothetical spiritual world. And I would like to share with you my inspirations. And in that way, perhaps I can contribute to your further well-being, development, and growth. I will never remain bored or made to feel as if it's a burden to share with you this kind of information. So I've categorized a way of seeing this realm of knowledge. So, Ava's Temple of Consciousness, subtitle, Mind, Myths, and Magic. Within the context of the mind category, we can explore philosophies, psychologies, and ways to understand the working of our mind, our thoughts, our consciousness of the moment and the reality of where we are and who we are. Under the heading or the category of myths, I'd like to explore with you ancient mythology, because I believe it is a ripe, symbolic treasure trove of wisdom, understanding, and a probing of what it is to be human and how to strive to be divine. That. And I then will also include my exploration of channeled information, esoteric information about the workings of our consciousness, about the workings of our psychology, because I find that to be enormously fascinating. Who we are and how we create our character and our life is absolutely fascinating to me. So, to begin this journey, I thought to start with a book. Look how thin it is. It's only 25 pages. And it's a work of philosophy by a gentleman named James Allen. The title is As a Man Thinketh. And this was, for me, my first real introduction to deep self-awareness. I was given this book when I was very, very young. previous to my studying of yoga. This was written at the turn of the last century. And in my opinion, it's a precursor, a foundational philosophical revelation that built the New Age movement. This is a work of tremendous power and philosophical importance, not in any way less than any other great work of philosophy or art. So, I'd like to begin, and I'm going to divide this video into chapter segments, so you can come back to the chapter that you'd missed, or maybe you want to skip around. But the introduction to it is where I'll begin. Man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tools with which he builds for himself heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. By the right choice and true application of thought, man ascends to the divine perfection. By the abuse and wrong application of thought, he descends below the level of the beast. Between these two extremes are the grades of character, and man is their maker or master. Of all the beautiful truths pertaining to the soul, which have been restored and brought to light in this age, none is more gladdening or fruitful of divine promise and confidence than this: that man is the master of thought, the molder of character, and the maker and shaper of condition, environment, and destiny. As a being of power, intelligence, and love, and the Lord of his own thoughts, man holds the key to every situation and contains within himself the transforming regenerative agency by which he may make himself what he wills. Man is always the master, even in his weaker and most abandoned state. But in his weakness and degradation, he is the foolish master who misgoverns his household. When he begins to reflect upon his condition and to search diligently for the law upon which his being is established, he then becomes the wiser master, directing his energies with intelligence and fashioning his thoughts to fruitful issue. Such is the conscious master, and man can only thus become by discovering within himself the laws of thought, which discovery is totally a matter of application, self-analysis, and experience. Only by much searching and mining are gold and diamonds obtained. And man can find every truth connected with his being if he will dig deep into the mine of his soul, and that he is the maker of his character, the molder of his life, the builder of his destiny. He may unerringly prove, if he will watch, control, and alter his thoughts, tracing their effects upon himself, upon others, and upon his life and circumstances. Linking cause and effect by patient practice and investigation, and utilizing his every experience, even to the most trivial, everyday occurrences, as a means of obtaining that knowledge of himself which is understanding, wisdom, power. In this direction, and in no other, is the law absolute that, quote, he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened, unquote. For only by patience, practice, and ceaseless importunity can a man enter the door of the temple of knowledge. You see how he lays the burden and responsibility for your life at your own feet. And there's a deep understanding that the physical reality that you experience is an absolute mirror of your thoughts, beliefs, and loves and fears. So this prepares us for the daunting task of accepting that responsibility, of pledging in all sincerity to oneself, to ourselves, that we will be honest and sincere in our effort to achieve control of our thoughts so that they can become a source of power as opposed to the source of affliction. That is what this challenges us to do. So, let's continue. The effect of thought on circumstances. This is where we link the spiritual, the non-tangible, with the tangible, with the material, with those events, circumstances that are our reality. The effect of thoughts on circumstances. A man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts, and cultivating towards perfection the flowers and fruits of right, useful, and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever-increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstances, and destiny. Thought and character are one. And as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. This does not mean that a man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character, but that those circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital thought element within himself that, for the time being, they are indispensable to his development. Every man is where he is by the law of his being. The thoughts which he has built into his character have brought him there. And in the arrangement of his life, there is no element of chance, but all is the result of a law that cannot err. This is just as true for those who feel out of harmony with their surroundings as of those who are connected to them. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is that he may learn, that he may grow. And he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for him. It passes away and gives place to other circumstances. Man is buffeted by circumstances so long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions. But when he realizes that he is a creative power and that he may command the hidden soil and seeds of his being out of which circumstances grow, he then becomes the rightful master of himself. The circumstances grow out of thought. Every man knows who has for any length of time practiced self-control and self-purification. For he will have noticed that the alteration in his circumstances have been in exact ratio with his altered mental condition. So true is this, that when a man earnestly applies himself to remedy the defects of his character and makes swift and marked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes. It's very interesting right there. I'm going to pause because I think this is a interesting point to be made, that as you purify your inner thoughts, beliefs, intents, that this process manifests itself in the outer world, the material world, reflecting this progress. The more rapid your progress, the more vicissitudes, the more problems, difficult circumstances that you navigate through, in a way sharpening your sense of self and the urgency of the change that's happening within you. That's a very important point, because we are often then feel that things are unfair because they don't reflect precisely yet the being that we want to evolve into becoming. And our circumstances may present those challenges, those problems that help you to advance in this process of self-development. All right. Here we go. This is a beautiful way to re-enter. The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors. This is the New Age concept of like attracts like. So the soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches the height of its cherished aspirations. It falls to the level of its unchastened desires. And circumstances are the means by which the soul receives its own. Every thought seed sown or allowed to fall into the mind and to take root there produces its own blossoming sooner or later into act and bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstances. Good thoughts bear good fruit. Bad thoughts, bad fruit. The outer world of circumstance shapes itself into the inner world of thought. And both pleasant and unpleasant eternal conditions are factors which may make for the ultimate good of the individual. As the reaper of his own harvest, man learns both by suffering and by bliss. Following the inmost desires, aspirations, thoughts, by which he allows himself to be dominated, pursuing the will-o'-wisps of impure imaginings, or steadfastly walking the highway of strong and high endeavor, a man at last arrives at their fruition and fulfillment in the outer conditions of his life. The laws of growth and adjustment everywhere obtains. A man does not come to the alms house or the jail by tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Nor does a pure-minded man fall suddenly into crime by stress of any mere external force. The criminal thought had long been secretly fostered in the heart, and the hour of opportunity revealed its gathered power. Circumstance does not make the man. It reveals him to himself. No such conditions can exist as descending into vice and its attendant suffering apart from vicious inclinations, or ascending into virtue and its pure happiness without the continued cultivation of virtuous aspirations. A man, therefore, as the Lord and Master of thought, is the maker of himself, the shaper and author of environment. Even at birth, the soul comes to its own, and through every step of its earthly pilgrimage, it attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are the reflection of its own purity and impurity, its strength and weakness. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Oh my God. It couldn't be said more succinctly than that. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Their whims, fancies, and ambitions are thwarted at every step, but their inmost thoughts and desires are fed with their own food, be it foul or clean. The divinity that shapes our ends is in ourselves. It is our own very self. Only himself manacles man. Thought and action are the jailers of fate. They imprison. They base. They are also, though, the angel of freedom. They liberate. Being noble. Not what he wishes and prays for does a man get, but for what he justly earns. He wishes and prays, his wishes and prayers, are not only gratified and answered when they harmonize with his thoughts and actions. In the light of this truth, the truth that we create our own reality according to the goodness or the evil of our thoughts, In light of this truth, what then is the meaning of fighting against circumstances? It means that a man is continually revolting against an effect without, while at the same time he is nourishing and preserving its cause in his heart. That cause may take the form of conscious vice or an unconscious weakness, but whatever it is, it stubbornly retards the efforts of its possessor, and thus calls out aloud for a remedy. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. This is as true of earthly as of heavenly things. Even man whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish this object. And how much more so who would realize a strong and self-poised life. Here is a man who is wretchedly poor. He is extremely anxious that his surroundings and home comforts should be improved. But at the same time, he shirks his work and considers he is justified in trying to deceive his employer on ground of the insufficiency of his wages. Such a man does not understand the simplest rudiments of those principles which are the basis of true prosperity. It is not only totally unfit to rise out of his wretchedness, but is actually attracting to himself a still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in it and acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly, unwomanly thoughts. Here is a rich man who is the victim of a painful and persistent disease as a result of gluttony. He's willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it. But he will not sacrifice his gluttonous desires. He wants to gratify the taste for rich and unnatural viands and have his health as well. Such a man is totally unfit to have health because he has not yet learned the first principles of a healthy life. He is an employer of labor who adopts crooked measures to avoid paying the regulation wage and, in the hope of making larger profits, reduces the wages of his workpeople. Such a man is altogether unfitted for prosperity, and he finds himself bankrupt, both in regards to his reputation and his riches. He blames circumstances, not knowing that he is the sole author of his condition. Now, I have introduced these three cases merely as illustrative of the truth that man is the causer, though nearly always this is unconscious, of his circumstances, and that, whilst aiming at a good end, he is continually frustrating its accomplishment by encouraging thoughts and desires which he cannot possibly harmonize with that end. Such cases could be multiplied and varied almost indefinitely. But this is not necessary, as the reader can, if he so resolves, trace the action of the law of thought to his own mind and life. And until this is done, mere external facts cannot serve as a ground of reasoning. Circumstances, however, are so complicated. Thought is so deeply rooted, and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals, that a man's entire soul condition, although it may be known to himself, cannot be judged by another from the external aspect of his life alone. A man may be honest in certain directions, yet suffer privation, as a man may be dishonest in certain directions and yet acquire wealth. But this conclusion usually formed that the one man fails because of his peculiar honesty, and the other prospers because of his peculiar dishonesty, is the result of a superficial judgment, which assumes that the dishonest man is almost totally corrupt, and that the honest man almost entirely virtuous. In the light of a deeper knowledge and wider experience, such judgment is found to be erroneous. The dishonest man may have some admirable virtues which the other does not possess, and the honest man obnoxious vices which are absent in the other. So the honest man reaps the good results of his honest thoughts and acts. He also brings upon himself the suffering which his vices produce. The dishonest man may dislike the dishonest man likewise garners his own suffering and happiness. To every man his own destiny, carved out by the virtues and vices of his character, of his thoughts, of his beliefs. It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtues, but not until a man has extirpated every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind, and washed every sinful stain from his soul, can he be in a position to know and declare that his suffering are the result of his good and not of his bad qualities. And on the way to, yet long before he has reached the supreme perfection, he will have found, working in his mind and life, the great law, which is the absolute just, and which cannot, therefore, give good for evil or evil for good. Possessed of such knowledge, he will then know, looking back upon his past ignorance and blindness, that his life is and always was justly ordered, and that all his past experiences, good and bad, were the equitable outworking of his evolving, yet unevolved self. This again is the accepting of this responsibility is one of the heaviest commands, shall we say, of self-development and growth. to look honestly at your life circumstances, and if there's something that you do not like about it, that you find oppressive, hurtful, or you have experienced deep suffering, you must correlate in all self-honesty aspects of yourself that may have attracted those circumstances, situations, sufferings to yourself. That's why this philosophy, this way of interpreting consciousness, is not very popular. It's often watered down, washed down, as all you need to do is just to declare yourself to be pure, declare yourself to be good, but to make no real effort circumstantially, day to day, the trivial, everyday events, to evidence this pledge. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in some direction. It is an indication that the individual is out of harmony with himself, with the law of his being. The sole and supreme use of suffering is to purify, to burn out all that is useless and impure. Suffering ceases for him who is pure. There could be no object in burning gold after the dross has been removed, and a perfectly pure and enlightened being could not suffer. The circumstances which a man encounters with suffering are the result of his own mental inharmony. The circumstances which a man encounters with blessedness are the result of his own mental harmony. Blessedness, not material possessions, is the measure of right thought. Wretchedness, not material possessions, is the measure of wrong thought. A man may be cursed and rich. He may be blessed and poor. Blessedness and riches are only joined together when the riches are rightly and wisely used. And the poor man only descends into wretchedness when he regards his lot as a burden unjustly imposed. Indigence and indulgence are the two extremes of wretchedness. Let me repeat that. Indigence and indulgence, gluttony, egoism, lassitude. They are both equally unnatural and the result of mental disorder. A man is not rightly conditioned until he is a happy, healthy, and prosperous being. And happiness, health, and prosperity are the result of a harmonious adjustment of the inner with the outer, of the man with his surroundings. A man only begins to be a man when he ceases to whine and revile and commences to search for the hidden justice which regulates his life. And as he adapts his mind to that regulating factor, he ceases to accuse others as a cause of his condition. And he builds himself up in strong, noble thoughts. He ceases to kick against circumstances, but begins to see them as aids to his more rapid progress, and as a means of discovering the hidden powers and possibilities within himself. Law, not confusion, is the dominating principle in the universe. Justice, not injustice, is the soul and substance of life. And righteousness, not corruption, is the molding and moving force in the spiritual government of the world. This being so, man has but to right himself to find that the universe is right. And during the process of putting himself right, he will find that he alters his thoughts towards things and other people. Things and other people will alter towards him. The proof of this truth is in every person, and it therefore admits easy investigation by systematic introspection and self-analysis. Let a man radically alter his thoughts, and he will be astonished at the rapid transformation it will effect in the material conditions of his life. Men imagine that thought can be kept secret, but it cannot. It rapidly crystallizes into habits of drunkenness, sensuality, which solidify into circumstances of destitution and disease. Impure thoughts of every kind crystallize into enervating and confusing habits, which solidify into distracting and adverse circumstances. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and indecision crystallize into weak, unmanly, unwomanly, and irresolute habits, which solidify into circumstances of failure, indigence, and slavish dependence. Lazy thoughts crystallize into habits of uncleanliness and dishonesty, which solidify into circumstances of foulness and beggary. Hateful and condemnatory thoughts crystallize into habits of accusation and violence, which solidify into circumstances of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of self-seeking, which solidify into circumstances more or less distressing. On the other hand, beautiful thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of grace and kindness, which solidify into genial and sunny circumstances. Pure thoughts crystallize into habits of temperance and self-control, which solidify into circumstances of repose and peace. Thoughts of courage self-reliance, and decision crystallize into manly, womanly habits, which solidify into circumstances of success, plenty, freedom. Energetic thoughts crystallize into habits of cleanliness and industry, which solidify into circumstances of pleasantness. Gentle, forgiving thoughts crystallize into habits of gentleness, which solidify into protective and preservative, I couldn't see the word, preservative circumstances. Loving and unselfish thoughts crystallize into habits of self-forgiveness for others, which solidify into circumstances of sure and abiding prosperity and true riches. A particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce its results on the character and circumstances. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly, yet surely, shape his circumstances. Nature helps every man to the gratification of his thoughts, which he most encourages, and opportunities are presented which will most speedily bring this to the surface both the good and the evil thoughts. Let a man cease from his sinful thoughts, and all the world will soften towards him and be ready to help him. Let him put away his weakly and sickly thoughts, and lo, opportunities will spring up on every hand to aid his strong resolves. Let him encourage good thoughts, and not hard fate shall bind him down to wretchedness and shame. The world is your kaleidoscope, and the varying combinations of colors, which at every succeeding moment it presents to you, are the exquisitely adjusted pictures of your ever-moving thoughts. It ends with a poem. Well, let's summarize and comment a bit about the first chapter. Remember, the title is The Effect of Thought on Circumstances. Now, what I really loved poetically and in his ability to give a mental picture of the phenomenon of thought in its ability to create circumstances is his beautiful analogy to a garden, the mind being like a garden. He says, a man's mind may be likened to a garden. It's so easy to see that. He says, just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend to his mind. So it's so beautiful because you can envision a garden full of weeds and decay and just being a growth of chaos, as opposed to a garden beautifully arranged with those flowers and fruits that create beauty, that will sustain you, that will keep your life supported, and will be a joy to be in. That's what he's asking us to consider. And again, I really remember that this lays the foundation, I believe, to the New Age movement, where their primary tenet, core belief, is that thoughts, beliefs create reality. He also importantly points out how thought forces and mind elements, that is, thought elements, operate in the shaping of one's character, circumstance, and destiny. Character. Thought and character are one. So it's not so much that you can declare or even make a passing resolution about what you're going to, how you're going to change your thoughts, your beliefs. But he puts it to the depth of your character. When your thoughts and beliefs harmonize with high moral character, then the process of changing your circumstance, your destiny, is how it empowers you. This is the power behind the tool of thought and belief. So he says every man is where he is by the law of his being. The thoughts that he has built with his character. He also says man is buffeted by circumstances so long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions. A very important thing to remember again. If you feel buffeted, controlled by things from the outside, where you think everything is a matter of just chance, then you've lost your ability to direct your life. This one belief is central to building your thought power, is to recognize that it's true, that your thoughts are in fact powerful, and you must take them seriously and shape and fashion them so that they produce good fruit, beautiful flowers in the mind garden that you live in. So he also mentions good thoughts, therefore, create or bear good fruit. Bad thoughts, bad fruit. The essence of karma. That's all there is to it. Good thoughts, good things. Bad thoughts, bad things. It couldn't be more simple. Men do not attract that which they want. And I repeated this during the reading of it because I immediately understood how important this is. Let me repeat again. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. But that which they are. What you are is created by your thoughts and your beliefs. Nothing else. You can be born into very wealthy, advantaged circumstances, and yet make a complete ruin of your life. Or you could be born into a underprivileged situation and excel and create abundance, joy, and love. It is in your hands. You have that garden to cultivate as you wish. That's the beauty of life, that we are all given the same power. He says men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. This is why I thought that, launching this channel concept might not have a very large audience, because people pay lip service to the idea of self-improvement. And they may be able to do it superficially, join the gym, get some plastic surgery, shortcuts. Whereas real self-improvement and self-development is extremely difficult, because we are our worst enemy. Through the adoption of bad habit, bad thought, perhaps even having put ourselves into an environment that does not in any way support self-development, but may in fact be contrary to it, then sometimes people become absolutely hopeless and they give up on their own power to improve themselves, and they don't try, because it's a sort of I guess anything difficult is something that anything difficult is going to separate the wheat from the chaff. And so is the bearing of this responsibility by each of us. The other idea that was very interesting in his perusal of this very important subject of the nature of consciousness, or the nature of reality, is the idea of suffering. And suffering has been treated in many philosophies and in many religions, particularly Buddhism, where everything is a sort of an escape from suffering, where life itself is almost described as suffering. And he says the sole and supreme use of suffering is to purify. It's to purify like the fire purifies metal, to take out the dross. It's only through suffering that we can come to a seriousness about life. And in that seriousness, we either are made to be heroes, or we are victims of those very circumstances that were either created by us or that we have been born into. So that is a very important philosophical idea, because suffering is universal in the human experience. At some point, because we die, there is a loss. Whether your whole life you've been pampered and protected from life's foibles or ups and downs, nonetheless, everyone dies, and that ceasing of being, in and of itself, can be a great teacher. So there's no excuse for not being able to use suffering as a educational tool, really. Suffering helps us to also control our responses to our circumstance, emotional and intellectual. So it's of great value. And finally, his very poignant comment at the end of this chapter is I think bears repeating. The world is your kaleidoscope, and the varying combinations of colors, which at every succeeding moment it presents to you, are the exquisitely adjusted pictures of your ever-moving thoughts. Just think of it that way, that our thoughts can create a kaleidoscope of beauty or suffering. It's up to you. So that is chapter 1. And so stay tuned for chapter 2. And if you have any questions or comments about what you've seen and heard, please leave them below. And what I'll do is I'll create a separate video containing all the comments. And if you want me to mention your name or not, please include that as well. And if there's still any way that I can help you directly, I, as you know, had this channel for 8 years as a channel devoted to metaphysics and the use of the tarot. I've been a professional tarot card reader for 40 more years. And so I have a variety of readings that I can help you with. The 4-card spread mimics and is very similar to the same spread that I used when I had my tarot forecasts every month for every sign. You can use those if you wish to have something that is more similar or familiar to you. They will be very helpful, I think. And any other readings that you utilize, I will try to help you, and maybe even to connect it to what we've learned, and to help you to unleash from yourself these latent potential powers of thought. So please, if you would, there's links below if you would like a reading from me, and or would like, I'll leave you my email if you'd like to reach out to me in some way. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next chapter. Thank you.